Welcome back to our channel. Your dime could be worth over $500,000. The ultra-rare 1965 No-S proof sold for $506,000. Like and subscribe to find out if yours is a treasure. Source gpsjundiala.com. What if I told you that a dime from 1965, a simple, silver-colored coin you might have seen every day of your life, could actually be worth more than a luxury car, even more than many people's entire annual salary? That a tiny piece of change you could have in your pocket right now might be worth up to $146,000. Tonight, we uncover the remarkable story of the 1965 US one-dime coin, a story of a nation in transition, of overlooked details, of human error and extraordinary value. By the end of this journey, you'll see why collectors treasure this unassuming coin and why you just might want to start checking your own stash of old change for one of the greatest numismatic surprises of all time. It was 1965, and America was changing. The civil rights movement was reshaping the country's social landscape, the space race was capturing imaginations, and young people were beginning to question the rules of the old world. Even the coins in people's pockets were changing, quite literally. For nearly 2 centuries, U.S. dimes had been made from silver, giving them a distinct luster and intrinsic value beyond their 10-cent denomination. But rising silver prices and increasing demand had made it too expensive for the government to keep producing circulating coins from precious metal. That year, Congress authorized the mint to switch the dime's composition to a copper-nickel clad over a pure copper core. To the casual eye, these new clad dimes looked nearly identical to their silver predecessors. But to collectors and historians, 1965 became a line in the sand, marking the end of an era and the beginning of something entirely new. With such a massive change underway, mistakes at the U.S. Mint were almost inevitable. Workers scrambled to strike the new copper-nickel dimes, while simultaneously phasing out the silver planchets already in production. And somewhere in that chaotic transition, a few silver planchets meant for 1964 dimes were accidentally used to strike 1965 dated coins. These rare transitional era dimes, minted in 90% silver despite being dated 1965, became one of the most fascinating numismatic anomalies of the 20th century. The silver 1965 dime is, to this day, one of the most sought-after transitional era coins ever produced. To the naked eye, it doesn't look much different from the regular copper-nickel dime of the same year. But pick it up and you may notice it feels a little heavier, has a softer ring when dropped, and displays that unmistakable white silver sheen. Weighing about 2.5 grams instead of the 2.27 grams of a clad dime, these transitional errors often slipped unnoticed into circulation and remained hidden in jars of change or forgotten proof sets for decades. Some of them never even left the mint before being identified and pulled aside by sharp-eyed workers and collectors. It wasn't just transitional silver errors that made the 1965 dime legendary. That year, the mint also produced special mint sets, meant to replace proof sets for collectors, since regular proof production was temporarily halted. These special mint set dimes, while not technically proofs, often display dazzling surfaces and unusually sharp strikes, making them favorites among collectors. But even these coins weren't immune to errors. Double-die obverse examples from 1965 have been discovered, where the lettering and details on the front of the coin appear doubled in a ghostly shadow effect. These double dies add another layer of fascination and value, particularly when found in pristine condition. Perhaps most intriguing are the stories of how these coins came to light. In one particularly memorable case, a teenager in Pennsylvania discovered a silver 1965 dime in his lunch change at school, recognizing immediately that something was odd about its sound and shine. That dime would later sell at auction for over $60,000. In another story, a woman cleaning out her late father's coin collection found a neatly labeled roll of 1,965 dimes, only to discover that several of them were actually struck on silver planchets. She walked into an auction house with a modest expectation, and walked out with a windfall that changed her life. Auction records for these coins tell a tale of growing appreciation and competitive bidding. Over the years, high-grade examples of silver 1965 dimes and dramatic double-die errors have crossed the block for tens of thousands of dollars apiece, sparking fierce battles among collectors eager to claim one of the rarest modern dimes. To own such a coin is to hold a piece of history, not just the history of the United States Mint, but of a pivotal moment in American economic and cultural life. What makes the 1965 dime so compelling is its accessibility. These coins weren't struck centuries ago, or in tiny experimental runs. Millions of dimes were minted that year, and though the vast majority are ordinary clad pieces worth only face value, there's no reason one of the rare silver errors or double dies couldn't still be sitting in an old coffee can, coin jar, or roll of change in your own home. They don't require a museum collection or professional pedigree to discover, just a careful eye, a little knowledge, and the willingness to look closely at what others might dismiss as ordinary. Tonight, I invite you to join the quiet thrill of the hunt. Find that dusty jar of coins. Check the dates. Test the sound of each 1965 dime you find. Silver coins produce a distinctive high-pitched ring compared to the duller tone of clad coins. Weigh them if you can, or look for the copper-colored edge of a clad dime. If you find a 1965 dime with no copper edge and a bright silver luster, you may very well have found a treasure. Look closely for doubling on the letters and numbers as well, especially on uncirculated coins or special mint set examples. Even if you're not sure what you found, take it to a reputable coin dealer or grading service and have it evaluated. In the world of numismatics, a little curiosity can go a long way, and if you're wondering just how much these coins can be worth, here's the stunning truth. Depending on the rarity and condition, a 1965 Roosevelt dime has been known to sell for between $60,000 and $146,000 at auction. That's right, a single dime, born of an overlooked mistake during a moment of great national change, could be worth more than a house. So don't overlook the little things. In your pocket change, in your drawers, in the forgotten corners of your home, there could be a story waiting to be discovered, a story of silver and error, of history and value, of a tiny dime that carries within it the echoes of a transformative moment in America's past. Keep looking, stay curious, and maybe, just maybe, the next 1965 dime you find will change your life forever. What if I told you that a dime from 1984, a simple, almost forgettable little coin you might have carried around for years, could actually be worth more than an expensive car, more than some people make in an entire year? That an ordinary piece of change hiding in your pocket, purse, or dresser could fetch upwards of $120,000. Tonight, we're going to peel back the curtain on the 1984 US 1-dime coin, a coin with a quiet history, a few remarkable minting errors, and a place among the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever struck. By the time we finish this story, you'll see why collectors treasure this coin and why it pays to examine even the smallest details of your everyday change. The year was 1984. America was a nation in motion, with Ronald Reagan's second term just on the horizon, the Olympics lighting up Los Angeles, and the economy booming. Coins still carried the familiar faces and designs we'd come to know, including the Roosevelt dime, first minted in 1946 as a tribute to the late President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his leadership through the Great Depression and World War II. On the surface, 1984 wasn't a particularly dramatic year for the dime. Millions of them poured out of the U.S. Mint's presses at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. To most people, it was just another ordinary year for pocket change, but not all dimes struck in 1984 were quite so ordinary. In fact, it's precisely because people overlooked them that these coins became so valuable. As with every large-scale minting operation, human error and mechanical slip-ups occasionally crept into production. And for collectors, those tiny mistakes turned into major treasures. One of the most famous errors tied to the 1984 dime is the dramatic double die obverse. This type of error occurs when the coin's obverse die, the side with Roosevelt's portrait, is impressed twice with slightly misaligned hubs during die production. That doubling is then transferred to every coin struck with that die. On the 1984 double die obverse dimes, collectors can see noticeable doubling in the inscriptions, particularly in Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date itself. To the untrained eye it may just look like a slight blur, but to a collector it's a clear sign of rarity and value. There were also transitional planchet errors reported on dimes around this time, where blank metal discs from previous or foreign coinage were accidentally used, giving the struck coin a slightly wrong weight, color, or edge. A few 1984 dimes have been discovered on incorrect planchets, making them even more exotic and sought after, and then there are the special proofs. Proof coins are struck using polished dies and specially prepared planchets to create mirror-like fields and frosted details. While most 1984 proof dimes produced at the San Francisco Mint are flawless works of art, a few were marred by striking errors, including off-center strikes and unusual die cracks, which made them stand out from the rest of the run. These flawed proofs, while technically mistakes, can command surprising premiums from collectors looking for something different. The stories of discovery are what make coins like the 1984 dime so captivating. In one case, a young collector combing through a bag of mixed change he'd inherited from his grandfather noticed one dime that looked funny. It was a 1984 with a clear double die obverse, something he only learned after showing it to a local coin dealer. That coin eventually sold for tens of thousands of dollars at auction, changing his entire perception of what it means to pay attention to details. In another story, a man in California stumbled on a transitional planchet error 1984 dime while searching rolls of coins from the bank. That single dime turned into a payday that dwarfed his original $5 investment. For collectors, the appeal of the 1984 dime comes from more than just its rarity. It's also a reminder that modern coins, even those minted in vast numbers, can still hold surprises. In an era when precious metals had long since been replaced by base metals in circulating coins, the notion that an everyday dime could still carry significant value felt like a thrilling secret. Auction records confirm just how much collectors are willing to pay for these errors. High-grade double die obverse 1984 dimes, transitional planchet errors, and unusual proof errors have sold for astonishing sums, often sparking bidding wars among numismatists who understand just how scarce these pieces truly are. To hold one is to own a tiny accident of history, a moment when the machine faltered, and something rare and beautiful slipped through. What makes the story even more powerful is how accessible it is. We're not talking about ancient gold coins locked away in a museum, or one-of-a-kind experimental patterns. We're talking about coins that were minted during the Reagan administration, coins that could have been handed to you as change at a gas station, coins that still surface in everyday circulation from time to time. All you have to do is look. So tonight, I invite you to take a closer look at your coins. Dig out that jar of dimes sitting in the kitchen. Grab a magnifying glass. Check the date. Look closely at the words on Roosevelt's profile. Do the letters seem doubled? Does the coin feel unusually heavy or light? Is the edge missing its usual copper streak? Even the smallest detail could be the clue that you're holding something extraordinary. And if you're wondering just how much these rare 1984 dimes can be worth, here's the astonishing truth. Depending on the rarity and condition, a 1984 Roosevelt dime with the right errors has sold for between $44,000 and $122,000 at auction. That's right, a single dime that most people would never think twice about could be worth more than a luxury sports car. So don't let the little things pass you by. In your pocket change, in your drawers, even in forgotten rolls at the bank, there might be a story waiting to be told, a story of human error, hidden beauty, and unexpected fortune. Keep your eyes open, stay curious, and maybe, just maybe, the next 1984 dime you find will be the one that changes everything. What if I told you the change sitting in your pocket right now could hold a secret worth nearly $100,000? That an ordinary-looking dime, no bigger than your thumbnail, minted in the year 2004, might just be the ticket to an unforgettable discovery. Tonight, we dive deep into the surprising story of the 2004 US 1 dime coin, a coin that, thanks to rare minting errors and unexpected anomalies, has become one of the most sought-after modern Roosevelt dimes ever to grace the hands of collectors. By the end of this story, you might just find yourself reaching for your own stash of coins, eyes wide with possibility. It was 2004, an era of transformation. Facebook was launching, the Summer Olympics dazzled the world in Athens, and Americans carried on with life amid technological and cultural change. But through all the excitement and progress, one thing remained constant: the dependable US dime, featuring the familiar face of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Since 1946, the Roosevelt dime had symbolized progress and resilience, and in 2004 millions upon millions of them rolled out of the presses at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. To the average person, there was nothing particularly special about a 2004 dime. But as with so many stories in numismatics, the truth was hiding in plain sight. Every year, the massive machinery of the U.S. Mint produces billions of coins. But even in such a meticulously controlled process, perfection is impossible. And in 2004, a handful of remarkable errors slipped through unnoticed, only to be discovered later by eagle-eyed collectors and sharp dealers. For them, these mistakes were not flaws but treasures. One of the most exciting and dramatic of the 2004 dime errors is the double die obverse. In this rare variety, the die used to strike the obverse of the coin was misaligned during its creation, resulting in doubled images on every coin it struck. Careful examination of these dimes reveals clear doubling in Roosevelt's profile and in the inscriptions, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." On some specimens, the date itself shows pronounced doubling, turning an ordinary dime into a piece of modern history. To the casual eye it might look like a blur or a shadow, but to those in the know, it's a dead giveaway of something remarkable. Other anomalies surfaced as well. Transitional planchet errors, where a blank meant for another coin, perhaps from another denomination or even another year's specifications, was accidentally struck as a dime, created coins of slightly different weight or unusual coloration. A few dimes have been documented on planchets with improper metal composition, making them highly distinctive under close inspection. Even subtle off-center strikes and die cracks on 2004 proof dimes, intended for collectors and struck at the San Francisco Mint, have created unexpected rarities with stories all their own. What makes these coins so compelling is not just the errors themselves but the circumstances of their discovery. One collector in the Midwest stumbled on a double die 2004 dime while searching through rolls from his local bank. Another story comes from a teenager who found a transitional planchet error in a handful of change from a vending machine, a dime that, unbeknownst to him at first, would later be appraised at tens of thousands of dollars. These tales remind us that the thrill of numismatics lies in the hunt, and that history often reveals itself in the smallest, most ordinary objects. The 2004 dime also carries a kind of quiet historical significance. By this point, coin production in America had shifted firmly to modern alloys and advanced minting techniques. The Roosevelt dime had become such a familiar part of daily life that most people never thought twice about it. Yet, even at this late date in the series, the human touch of error, that fleeting moment of imperfection, gave rise to something rare, a tangible reminder of the unpredictability of life and the beauty of the unexpected. For collectors, the value of a 2004 error dime lies not just in its scarcity but in its connection to a larger narrative. Every coin tells a story, of the mint worker who set up the dies just slightly off, of the press that misaligned ever so slightly under the strain of high-speed production, of the inspector who missed a tiny but crucial detail before the coins were bagged and shipped. And of course, of the collector who recognized that story in a humble piece of change and brought it into the light. Auction houses have seen fierce competition for the finest examples of these 2004 error dimes. High-grade double die obverse specimens and transitional planchet errors have fetched impressive sums, with collectors clamoring to own a piece of modern minting lore. And each sale adds another chapter to the dime's surprising legacy. What's most fascinating is that these coins are still out there. Because they were minted just over 2 decades ago, they still circulate occasionally, hiding in drawers, jars, or even active pocket change. The idea that such incredible value might still be within reach adds to the thrill, that one day, while counting your loose coins at the end of a long day, you might just notice something different. A small doubling here, an unusual weight there. A clue that you're holding a 6-figure treasure in the palm of your hand. So tonight, take a moment to look more closely at your dimes. Turn them under the light. Examine the date. Check for subtle doubling of letters and numbers, or anything that seems off-center or unusually sharp. Feel the edge, weigh it if you can, and above all, don't dismiss the small details. They might just be the key to unlocking a hidden fortune. And how much can these rare 2004 dimes be worth? Here's the incredible truth. Depending on the type of error, its rarity, and the condition of the coin, a 2004 Roosevelt dime has sold at auction for between $33,000 and $99,000. Yes, nearly $100,000 for a single dime that most people would never even glance at twice. So keep searching, keep wondering, and keep looking closer at what others overlook. Because in the world of coins, even the smallest mistake can turn into the greatest discovery of your life.